Tonight, a historic milestone for Canada's defense spending and contributions to the NATO alliance.
We embarked on this mission to protect Canadians, to defend our territory. We control our destiny.
Canada finally clears NATO's 2% mark after years of lagging behind, but there are questions about how exactly this country got there. Plus, Donald Trump extends a deadline to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, saying he'll hold off bombing energy plants for now.
They'll tell you we're not negotiating. We will not negotiate. Of course they're negotiating. They've been obliterated.
Conflicting narratives as the U.S. looks for an off-ramp from the war. And the IOC bans transgender women from Olympic competition.
One of the things that we like to see is fair and equal treatment of everyone on that field of play.
What it means for the bitter fight over gender and sports.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. For the first time in decades, Canada has reached a key defense spending target. Facing pressure from allies and looming security threats, it's finally meeting its NATO commitment. Ottawa has officially hit the 2% of GDP bar set by NATO, with overall defense spending now more than $60 billion. Still, it's a benchmark Canada just barely met. Compared to allies, this country's spending is consistently low. As Ashley Burke shows us tonight, the message from Ottawa is mission accomplished, but questions remain about how exactly tens of billions are being spent.
The Prime Minister marking a milestone for the military.
Great day.
For the first time since the Cold War, Canada has now hit NATO's spending target.
This is the beginning of a new era for Canada's defence.
Mark Carney announcing he kept his promise.
In 10 months, we have invested over $60 billion in our defense and security. That's the largest year-on-year increase in defense investment in generations.
NATO confirms it's the first time Canada and other countries lagging behind reached a goal of spending 2% of GDP on defense, just as the alliance raises the bar to 5% over the next decade.
Continuing this crucial trend will be a priority in the years to come. For too long, European allies and Canada were over-reliant on U.S. military might.
This moment comes after intense pressure from allies, including Donald Trump. He's called it unfair and says he's still disappointed with the military alliance.
NATO's a paper tiger, but more importantly, that we'll come to their rescue, but they will never come to ours.
The opposition says Canada should have met this target long ago.
It's no question that Mark Carney's responding to the person in the White House. That's the wrong reason. We were supposed to be here as a nation more than 2 years ago. We shouldn't have been dragging our feet and dithering.
Carney got here after a flurry of spending announcements, including a more than $300 million project to buy new rifles for the Army. But the government refused to provide a detailed breakdown of those costs.
I think it's laudable that the government is finally meeting our NATO commitment, but it should be able to account to Canadians as to how exactly it's doing that.
That defense expert says if the government isn't more transparent about the details of all of these investments, it risks losing public support to keep spending billions of dollars on defense.
And Ashley, what more do we know about how the government hit this target?
Well, Adrian, most of the money this year came from a salary boost for troops and repairs to infrastructure. The government also moved agencies like the Coast Guard under defense, but a lot of these investments are long-term projects to build bases and buy equipment, so the military won't see that happen right away.
All right, Ashley Burke in Ottawa tonight. Thank you. Next, let's bring in CBC News' chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton. So, Rosie, this target was really a long time in the making, but it comes with a bit of a big price tag. How's the government explaining this choice?
Yeah, Adrian, I mean, governing's about making these big choices, right? And certainly this one is happening on a much faster timeline than even was discussed in the last election. It's obviously about responding to the moment we're in. Public opinion polling suggests that Canadians are much more open to increased defense spending than they have been probably in decades, in part, of course, because of those increased threats on Canada's sovereignty and security from abroad, from south of the border. The government is tying this commitment to the promise of being able to build a defense industry in this country so it relies less on U.S. production, creates thousands of jobs. So that could also make this promise more palatable for some Canadians who may not be in favor of this kind of spending on defense. But spending like this will come at a cost. It's part of the reason the government is making tens of billions of dollars in spending cuts elsewhere, some of which is not even fully understood yet.
All right, Rosie, thank you. We'll see you back here in about 20 minutes for more on this with that issue.
Sure thing.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is calling for an apology from the RCMP for an operation that targeted Indigenous people.
Obviously, it's reprehensible practice, never should have happened, never would happen.
An investigation by CBC Indigenous uncovered thousands of documents dating back to the 60s detailing RCMP efforts to spy on, infiltrate, and disrupt Indigenous groups. RCMP Commissioner Mike Duhem expressed regret but stopped short of an apology. He has pledged to meet with Indigenous leaders. Well, turning to the war in the Middle East now, Donald Trump has again delayed his ultimatum to Iran to agree to a U.S. deal or face attacks on its civilian power grid. As Katie Simpson shows us from Doha, Qatar, while the bombs and bluster continue, there's little sign of diplomatic progress.
The strikes across Iran are unrelenting. Constant pressure from American and Israeli forces. The damage extensive enough, says the U.S. president, that it's forcing Iran to the negotiating table.
The reason they want to make a deal is they have been just beat to shit.
The White House confirmed it gave Iran a 15-point plan to end the war through intermediaries in Pakistan.
We will see where things lead, and if we can convince Iran that this is the inflection point with no good alternatives for them, other than more death and destruction.
And while Trump warned the regime it must make a deal or else.
But if they don't, we're their worst nightmare. In the meantime, we'll just keep blowing them away.
He also backed off one of his biggest threats, posting on social media, "I am pausing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 days, citing talks saying they are going very well. Trump gave Iran an ultimatum: open the Strait of Hormuz or power plants will be bombed. This marks the second time he's extended the deadline. Iran's foreign minister says no negotiations have taken place, but some messages have been exchanged through friendly countries.
We're at a very perilous moment. There's deep anxiety.
This political science professor says the war could be at a tipping point.
If negotiations don't succeed, then we're looking really into the abyss, into the unknown of how the Iranians might react, what the Americans might do.
Iran is trying to demonstrate its military is not as damaged as the U.S. says. Intercepted missile debris killed 2 people in Abu Dhabi. Israeli air defenses failed to stop a missile before it unleashed cluster munitions on a neighborhood in Tel Aviv. And a new front in this war may soon open up. The leader of the Houthis, the Iran-linked group in Yemen, says if the battle requires a military response, they're ready.
If the Houthis get involved, it could mean chaos for another vital shipping route in the Middle East. During the Israel-Hamas war, the Houthis targeted ships in the Red Sea.
And then from Trump, Katie, we have volatility. What more do we know about why he decided to delay his threat again?
Trump often appears motivated by the markets, and his language today, it rattled investors to the point that the markets had the worst day since the war began. For Trump to back off after markets closed, it fits a pattern we've seen before.
All right, thank you. That is Katie Simpson in Doha, Qatar. Supporters and critics of Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro gathered in New York as he and his co-defendant wife made their second court appearance since being grabbed by U.S. forces in January.
This is one more U.S. coup, one more U.S. kidnapping, one more U.S. war.
He don't love nobody. All political prisoners in my country don't have the right that he has here.
Inside the courtroom, the judge questioned the Trump administration's justification for blocking the Venezuelan government from paying the couple's legal fees. Maduro's lawyers argue that the move violates his constitutional rights. Well, transgender women are no longer allowed to compete in women's Olympic events. The International Olympic Committee says the move is about fairness and integrity. As Karen Paul shows us, while some agree with the move, others call it discriminatory and politically driven.
A controversial policy announcement from the president of the International Olympic Committee.
One of the things that we like to see, especially in sport, is fair and equal treatment of everyone on that field of play.
The IOC is banning transgender athletes from competing in women's events, starting at the 2028 Los Angeles Games. It was just 5 years ago that Laurel Hubbard became the first openly transgender woman to compete in the Olympic Games. She didn't medal. Then there's Caster Semenya, who has naturally higher testosterone levels for a woman. She won 2 Olympic gold medals in 2012 and 2016, fueling years of backlash and legal challenges. Now, she would be barred, along with most athletes with differences in sex development. The policy says eligibility for any women's event is limited to biological females, determined by a mandatory one-time gene test.
The smallest little bit of an advantage can be what makes you a gold medalist or not.
Reaction was swift.
I think you really do need to have a sport by sport, and frankly, athlete by athlete process.
I really feel for the athletes who might have their dreams kind of squashed through this.
The issue of gender in sports has sparked bitter debate. Last year, the Alberta government banned transgender girls from participating in amateur female sports.
I'm glad that International Olympic Committee follows Alberta's lead to protecting females in sport.
U.S. President Donald Trump issued similar guidance.
With this executive order, the war on women's sports is over.
Some say the IOC is bowing to political pressure.
It is U.S. administration, I'm sure, from where there is a lot of mobilization.
The IOC says this new policy is going forward. It won't apply to any athletes who have won medals in the past. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Runway 4 is back open at LaGuardia Airport tonight, 4 days after an Air Canada plane crashed into a fire truck on landing, killing both pilots. The remains of pilots Antoine Ferret and Mackenzie Gunther were transferred back to Canada today. The jet they were in was removed from the runway yesterday, along with the Port Authority fire and rescue vehicle it hit. That truck had initially been given permission to cross the runway just as the plane was coming into land. The investigation continues. And Air Canada's CEO, meanwhile, says he is continuing his efforts to improve his French skills as the uproar grows over his condolence video, which included only 2 French words. Several Quebec politicians are calling for his resignation. In a statement, he wrote, "I'm deeply saddened that my inability to speak French has diverted attention from the profound grief of the families and the great resilience of Air Canada's employees." Well, the federal government is aiming to change Canada's election laws to address the issues of deep fakes and foreign interference. Rafi Boudjikanian walks us through the changes and the questions over just how effective they may be.
The Liberals are unveiling their new plan to crack down on foreign interference.
Canada's elections belong to Canadians. Outside money, influence, and threats have no place in them.
MPs won't get to debate or pass the measures before next month's important by-elections, but Stephen McKinnon wants them in place for the next federal vote.
I'm hoping Parliament acts on these amendments with dispatch.
Those amendments include banning hyper-realistic deepfakes misrepresenting candidates, foreign donations to third-party political actors in forms that are difficult to track, and foreign influence on whether or how someone votes in nomination or leadership contests. Just how any of it would be enforced outside Canada's borders is not clear. The changes largely stem from the work of the public inquiry into foreign interference. It named China and India as top state actors engaged in meddling, countries Ottawa is now pursuing more trade with.
Whatever the source, we will call it out and we will work in private with that entity or country or whatever and work in identifying these threats in public.
Some observers point out that cooperation is hardly a guarantee.
Whether we'll see foreign actors comply, I think, is a very open question. It's going to depend on who the candidates are, what the interests of those foreign actors are.
But despite the challenges, analysts say Ottawa must try to safeguard Canada's elections.
I don't think any government is ever going to have the silver bullet, but I do think that we still need to be making advancements. We need to be trying to close loopholes, as I do see being done with this proposal.
The legislation would also rein in so-called longest ballot activists who have flooded some ballots with dozens of candidates they argue to push for electoral reform. The government calls what they're doing harassing behavior. Rafi Boudjikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
In northern Quebec, there's concern right now over just who is involved in the development of a potentially huge rare earth mineral mine at a time when the U.S. president has made clear he wants a steady supply. Stephen D'Souza, co-host of The Fifth Estate, takes a close look at how major U.S. entities are making big moves in Canada's industry.
Canada is a mining nation.
At the biggest mining conference in the world, Canada's energy minister came with a blunt message.
There's an obvious elephant in the room these days. We are at a hinge moment in Canadian history.
As Canada looks to break from U.S. dependence, Tim Hodgson says our abundance of critical minerals will play a big role.
Ultimately, access to your own critical minerals, access to your own energy is sovereignty, is strength, is security.
Critical minerals and rare earth elements are in many of the electronics we use every day, including renewable energy technology. But they're also used in missiles and drones. China controls much of the world's supply, leaving Canada and the U.S. looking for alternatives. One option, the Strange Lake site in northern Quebec. The federal government has given an unprecedented $175 million in loans to Torngat Metals for what could be the biggest rare earth mine in Canada. But a major investor in the company is Cerberus Capital Management, a controversial company with close ties to the Trump administration, and critics warn that could be an issue.
Why is the Canada not clear and transparent and coherent about the fact that the United States has so much leverage over our minerals?
And we found the U.S. Department of Defense has invested more than $300 million in Canadian mining and technology companies, all tied to critical minerals. Hodgson wouldn't say if he'll put limits on U.S. investments in our mining sector.
We will continue to trade with the United States. We will continue to trade with them when it benefits Canada. What we're focused on doing is growing our relationship with other countries.
The Torngat mine, though, still has to go through environmental assessments, so it's years away from production, if it's approved. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Toronto.
You can watch The Fifth Estate's full investigation, Critical Threat, right now on YouTube or Friday at 9 p.m., 9:30 in Newfoundland on CBC Television and CBC Gem. Well, New Brunswick is moving towards adding a new toll on the only highway connecting the province with Nova Scotia.
This is just very counterintuitive and counterproductive to the work that's being done across this country right now.
Why the added fee could be felt far beyond the Maritimes. Plus, in a historic first, Donald Trump's name is being added to U.S. currency. And a baby bear with a big attitude.
When I'm 5 minutes late for feeding, he starts screaming.
We're back in 2. That is Governor General Mary Simon awarding the Decorations for Bravery, one of Canada's highest civilian honors. 31 recipients received medals for risking their lives to protect others. Just some of the acts of bravery honored today included shielding someone during a bear attack and rescuing children from a burning building. Well, there's some backlash tonight over New Brunswick's plan for a toll at its Nova Scotia border. Kayla Hounsell hears from critics who warn it will hurt its maritime neighbors and beyond.
This is the only stretch of road linking Nova Scotia to New Brunswick and the rest of Canada.
a key trade link in the Atlantic region. Now the New Brunswick government wants to put a toll booth here.
I don't think anybody's happy about it, but it is what it is.
The toll will be in the New Brunswick border town of Aulac. It will only apply to visitors, directly affecting people in the Nova Scotia border town of Amherst, some of whom cross the border for work and school every day.
It feels like we're almost betrayed in a way.
New Brunswick tabled its budget last week with a nearly $1.4 billion deficit. The province says the toll is part of its solution to tackle mounting debt.
If we put $3-4 on people coming into our province to help pay for our infrastructure, I think that's fair.
It comes as governments across Canada have been trying to knock down barriers to interprovincial trade in the face of a trade war with the U.S. The federal government recently reduced the tolls on the Confederation Bridge from Prince Edward Island from more than $50 down to $20.
That's good for Prince Edward Island, and it's good for New Brunswick. A toll in Aulac is no good for any of us.
Communities and economies across Atlantic Canada are extremely interconnected. An estimated 2,500 commercial vehicles cross this stretch of highway every day, carrying $35 billion in goods a year.
This is just very counterintuitive and counterproductive to the work that's being done across this country right now.
The Trucking Association says the toll cost will affect truckers nationwide and will inevitably trickle down to consumers. New Brunswick doesn't plan to install the tolls until 2028, but says they'll then bring in around $10 million a year in revenue. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
The U.S. Treasury has announced Donald Trump's signature will appear on paper currency. The U.S. Treasury Secretary says the move marks the country's 250th anniversary, with the first bills expected to roll off the presses in June. This comes after the U.S. Mint unveiled plans last week for a gold coin bearing Trump's likeness. A panel of Trump appointees approved the design, despite a federal law barring images of living presidents on U.S. currency. After the break, Rosie's here with that issue. Hello.
Hey, Adrian. Tonight we're going to talk about Canada's defense spending targets.
Our defense industrial strategy is designed to create over 125,000, not just jobs, but high-paying careers, and all the while double our investment in defense R&D.
So what do these defense investments mean for Canada? Chantal, Althea, and Andrew join me to talk about that. Plus, we will, of course, look ahead to the NDP Leadership Convention this weekend and the stakes for the new leader. At issue tonight, Canada's defense budget. With more than $60 billion in spending, Canada has now fulfilled a crucial commitment to allies.
As a result of these efforts this morning, NATO confirmed that Canada has achieved its 2% defense expenditure target, half a decade ahead of the original schedule.
A strategy the Prime Minister says will also create jobs.
Our defense industrial strategy is designed to create over 125,000, not just jobs, but high-paying careers, and all the while double our investment in defense.
But the Conservatives say this target was reached too late.
We were supposed to be here as a nation more than 2 years ago. We shouldn't have been dragging our feet and dithering and not making the investments into equipment that we need to make sure that our forces can do the job that they're called upon to do.
So how important a milestone is this, and will this focus on defense spending sit well with Canadians? I'm Rosemary Barton, here to break it all down tonight. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj, good to see you all after a week away from me. Andrew, I'm going to start with you. I mean, obviously the Conservatives would say we should have got here sooner. I think Mark Carney would agree. And we certainly talked enough about why we were lagging behind. How big a deal is it that we've now met this target?
Well, it's a step. I mean, they are right. We are late. We did make commitments to have it done earlier. Carney says, you know, we're 5 or 6 years ahead of the schedule that Justin Trudeau set, which originally, informally behind the scenes, he told other NATO partners that we would never meet it. So we're ahead of never. But look, 2% only brings us up to where we should have been years ago. The rest of NATO is moving on. Many of them are already well ahead of us. We're way back in the pack, as usual. The longer-term target for, I think it's 2035, is 3.5%, or 5% if you include infrastructure. This is a very large work in progress. We are heading back to a level of defense spending as a percentage of our total spending at the federal government level to levels we haven't seen since the early 60s when we get to 3.5. We'll be looking at something like 20 to 25% of federal spending on that one department. This is going to present enormous challenges. It's going to be, first of all, just getting the money out the door. Our track record, even with the meager spending we've done in the past, is billions comes back unspent. Our procurement system has been basically broken. That needs to be fixed to ensure that we get the money spent at all, never mind spent well. But then we've got to look at how we're going to pay for this. Are we going to be prepared to make cuts in spending to make room for it, and other spending to make room for it? Are we going to pay for it with higher taxes? Are we just going to borrow it with the levels of debt that we already have? I do think the public is notionally ready more so than they were in the past. I think people are properly scared by what's happening in the world right now. But the real test will be, what are they prepared to sacrifice to finance it? And we don't know at this point.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the question, Althea. People seem to be talking about and far more interested in security and defense matters than we have been in a long time. And maybe that's enough to sort of persuade people that it's the right time to spend billions and billions of dollars.
I think people feel the threat, or felt the threat from Donald Trump, and understand where the Prime Minister is going, and you see that in public opinion polls. I think it's worth noting that even with the 2% that we reached, we are just still in the bottom. I don't want to say laggards, because we reached a threshold, but we're still at the bottom. And if we hadn't met the 2%, we would be dead last. I also think it's worth noting that we don't actually really have a good idea of where the money is going in fine detail. And that begs more question about the next tranche of money. The government laid out in its November budget a very huge plan to spend $350 billion extra dollars, because Justin Trudeau had pledged about $100 billion before. Where is all that money going to go? And I think that, people are not yet making the ties, and, we journalists are not yet making the ties, but more money in defense meant that there was less money for pharmacare. There was no extra money for pharmacare, and there's a lot of provinces that have not signed on to the pharmacare program. So eventually, people will start tying spending decisions to policy outputs.
Sure. I mean, it's a government making choices at the time we're in. And to your point, it's, with the extra spending, there's things like submarines that still have to be purchased, and we're told that decision is coming probably in the second quarter. Chantal.
Yes, you say government making choices. I believe most of the hard choices are still way ahead of this government, as opposed to what has happened. But if you're going to be spending more on defense, I can't think of a time when public opinion was more on side with this in my time. Usually you win elections by saying you're going to cancel procurement, military procurement projects. At this point, and thanks to Donald Trump, but I would also argue thanks to his threat on Greenland, which convinced many Canadians that the threat was real. There is an openness in public opinion, but the trade-offs, once they become obvious, we will see where people land, and they may not land where the government would like them to be.
I'll just ask one last question on this to you, Andrew, about the industrial strategy attached to this. The government seems to be making the bet as well that if it can create thousands of jobs by sort of onshoring the defense industry here, that will also make it more palatable. And I wonder what you think is the likelihood of that happening.
It may be that that's what they're going to do. I don't think it's good policy. It's never been good policy to put regional development and jobs for the boys ahead of military preparedness. We got away with it because we didn't have a serious military. We didn't need, we thought, a serious military because we could free ride in the rest of NATO. NATO's fed up with that, not just the United States, but the rest of NATO. The world is a much more dangerous place. We cannot afford this nonsense anymore. We need to be putting bang for the buck, the best weaponry for the cheapest price as the absolute sine qua non ahead of everything else. And it's disappointing to see the industrial strategy sticking to that old saw. I don't think that's well advised.
Chantal, you want to
Can we remember that it created deep splits when governments were handing out, in the name of industrial strategies, contracts like this between regions who were competing for the money and arguing rightly in many instances, that the choices were political. So this is not something easy to accomplish without creating regional jealousies.
Okay, I want to switch things up here if I can, and I'll let you go first, Althea, because you're in Winnipeg, and that is where the NDP is convening over the weekend. They're going to choose a new leader. There is a lot of, I think, a lot tied up in this decision in terms of who wins and their ability to turn things around for the party. What are you hearing about how people are feeling about this choice and whether it can be sort of momentum building for them?
Well, I think they're hoping that it will be momentum building. There is, they're starting at a pretty low floor, so hopefully for them it will be. I think the bigger challenge, frankly, is depending on who wins on Sunday, can they unify the party? And I don't just mean the federal party, but I especially mean its provincial wings. If Avi Lewis wins on Sunday, what does that mean for the provincial parties in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, even in Manitoba and in British Columbia? Can the party unite around him as a leader? If he doesn't win, it will be quite a surprise, frankly. And that also will send a message about how prepared the NDP is to embrace a different pathway that is being offered to them or promised to them in terms of victory, in terms of that dreaming big and more idealism, or is the membership more interested in tangible policies and influencing the governments of the day in terms of their policy choices? It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that has struck me over the past couple of days is all those numbers sort of looking at recognition factor of any of the candidates. And even the perceived frontrunner, Avi Lewis, is not super well known to Canadians, which is maybe something you can overcome, just ask Mark Carney, but it is a problem. And if he's not going to get a seat in the House quickly, and he doesn't seem to see that as a priority, I think an even bigger problem. But give me your sense, Chantal, of what the challenges are here.
I think the main challenge is to find a way in the main conversation, which has not been happening for the NDP. And not necessarily through fault of their own. The same could be said about the Bloc Québécois. The same was said about Pierre Poilievre. Canadians at this point are really focused on one central conversation. This is not business as usual. They're into the Canada, U.S., Canada and the world versus Trump conversation. And it's really hard for third parties to find a way in there. As for the seat thing, well, there will be an opening in Beaches, East York, I think it's called, in Toronto, when Nate Erskine-Smith, who's already announced that he wants to run provincially. This is a riding where the NDP used to do well, so I suspect if the next leader doesn't have a seat, he will be, or she, under tremendous pressure to get that seat.
Andrew, talk about how the NDP might respond to the moment we're in, because right now they clearly aren't taking up much space and clearly don't know how to respond to it.
Yeah, I really think they have to focus on survival at this point. And that, to me, militates in favor of a certain pragmatism. The NDP is kind of the inverse of the Liberals. The Liberals are very strong federally, or basically nowhere provincially. I think they have one, maybe two provincial governments. The NDP is the government in BC and Manitoba. They're the official opposition in Saskatchewan, Alberta, Ontario. They are a presence, and those parties tend to be fairly pragmatic, pretty results-oriented, pretty much in the mainstream. How are they going to work with an Avi Lewis insurgency at the federal level? What kind of base is that going to help them? How is he going to appeal to blue-collar workers if he's basically saying we're not going to build anything, we're not going to drill anything? How is he even going to appeal to soft left voters who've deserted the NDP for the Liberals and who might be called back if they thought this was a sensible voice?
Okay, Althea.
I think one of the reasons we haven't heard so much of them is because they were in the middle of a leadership contest. And you know, if you think back to when Jack Layton was elected in 2004, He went to the House, and even though he didn't have a seat, he had a press conference basically at the end of every question period and tried to inject himself in every single story. And the party was very aggressive, you know, like, you didn't ask us for a quote, and they wanted to like sneak into there, you know? And I do think the longer the Carney government is in office, the more of an opening they seem to be giving to left parties. And there's a lot of space for the NDP to occupy at the moment. You know, today, for example, on CBC, David McGuinty, the defense minister, was talking about possible contributions to the war in Iraq that Canada could be doing. We could be helping with demining, for example.
War in Iran,
Sorry, in Iran. Oops. You can easily see the NDP grabbing onto a whole bunch of issues where they are the only voice, and Elizabeth May from the Green Party with one seat. But, you know, that is kind of playing that traditional division that you saw in the center-left part of the Liberals.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I wonder, Chantal, if it's, you know, if they go too far to one side, where that leaves people, because it's about being center-left as opposed to too far left, right? If you're trying to pick up those votes. Last word to you there, Chantal.
Yeah, well, demining in Iran would also involve a ceasefire, so I'm trying to find a rationale for the NDP to oppose us trying to make things better in the event of peace breaking out. But it's a hard choice, because it is not as if the alternative, Heather McPherson, to name her, who has a seat in the House of Commons, is being seen as someone who makes a deep impression in the House. And so you kind of think it would probably play even more on the fault lines within the NDP to have someone from Alberta who is not going to share the views of many NDP members on pipelines, for instance, or resource development as leader. So I don't think they have an easy solution. They had in the past. Alexa McDonough, Jack Layton were easy solutions. But I'm not sure they have a unifier, whatever way they pick on the weekend.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens on the weekend. I got to leave it there. Thank you all very much. That is it for At Issue on the National. We're going to continue this conversation, talk about how some provinces are calling for more input on judicial appointments. You can catch our full conversation on YouTube and the podcast version, of course. And Adrian, At Issue a little bit shorter on the program tonight because of a special tribute.
Yeah, Rosie, we do indeed have one of those. We're going to be hearing from CBC News' Susan Bonner as she wraps her final broadcast after maybe 40 years with CBC, incredibly. Not only the steadiest of professionals, but gracious to her core. I mean, I think you always remember, right, the first people who were kind to you. She was that for me, and I know she means the world to you.
She sure does. When I first got here to the Parliamentary Bureau, Susan was here. She took me under her wing. She taught me so much about political reporting, Adrian. She was generous. She was welcoming. She mentored me as a young reporter, that I'm not anymore. Her contributions to political reporting in this country have been, frankly, inspiring. The CBC has been a better place because of her, and I am really, really proud of my friend today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rosie. That tribute is coming up next.
And I want to thank you, our listeners, for letting us tell your stories, letting us into your work and your lives, giving us your expertise, your time. It is a shared endeavor that I have cherished. So, for one last time, thank you for joining us. I say proudly, for CBC News, I'm Susan Bonner. Over and out.
Oof, that's hard. That was Susan Bonner signing off from her last show as host of Your World Tonight. That emotion shared by all of us here. Her contributions to CBC News and to this program are just monumental. So here's Susan with how her story here began and what it feels like after more than 40 years to say farewell.
The state will be blitzed in the coming weeks of this campaign. Tonight, a senior Conservative source offered a different explanation. Forecasters say Hurricane Danielle could arrive here next week. Susan Bonner, CBC News, Ottawa, Washington, Toronto.
A Canadian Forces Base, Suffield, Halifax, northeast of Calgary.
Susan Bonner, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Well, as a kid, I loved to write, and I used to write a lot of stories. And I remember being very young, a young girl in Montreal, and the FLQ crisis happened. My parents were really tense. Halloween was canceled. It was really, there was stress everywhere. And as a kid, I didn't understand it. So I started watching and listening to the news, and it really had an impact on me. And over the years, I put the two together, the wanting to write and wanting to understand what was going on in the world around me.
Susan Bonner reports.
Do I remember my first file for the National? Oh yeah. I was living in Saskatoon, my first posting, and it was a freak weather story, and I was called into work.
A surprise winter wind howled across central and southern Saskatchewan today.
And I heard the National wants to take the story. And I was so tense.
Susan Bonner reports.
All day long, the wind whipped Saskatoon. For some pedestrians, the gusts of up to 106 kilometers an hour were just too much.
But I have another first about the National that I will never forget. One of the early times when I was asked to fill in and actually host the National, and I was pregnant. And I sat in the big chair and all the lights went on, and I thought, wow, the two biggest things in my life might not get much better than this.
The National with Susan Bonner.
Good evening.
I think that going to Washington as a TV reporter has to be the highlight.
This country is polarized over Afghanistan, and the president's popularity has suffered over the issue.
Because it's kind of the holy place for political journalists, and that's what I consider myself, a political journalist. And I say that despite all the unholy characteristics that American politics are displaying now. That's television. In radio, the career highlights are absolutely the live coverage of our election campaigns. I love every minute of doing that.
This is Canada Votes 2019. The polls have now closed in the Maritimes in the 43rd general election.
I find all politicians extremely interesting. It's a really, really tough job. You're going to make people angry. You're going to disappoint people. And so how they handle all of that is endlessly intriguing to me. And watching it up close is a privilege.
This is The World at 6 tonight, shaking up the upper chamber.
It is a dynamic, crazy, wild ride working in a newsroom when a story is breaking, when things are happening.
So we are waiting to see how question period unfolds.
You have a team of people, and we're all working together on the same objective. What's happening? Why is it happening? Have we got it right? Are we going with this? It is team dynamics at its best. There's nothing quite like it. I'm going to miss the team. I'm going to miss the teamwork. And I'm going to miss the privilege of telling Canadians what's going on in the world.
And we're going to miss Susan. All of us at this team and throughout the newsroom feel exactly the same way. And whatever you do next, my friend, we will all be cheering you on. Coming up, BC volunteers rescue an abandoned baby bear.
Somehow he lost his mom.
How they helped save the 6-week-old cub next in our moment. Who is that, you ask? Well, that is a 6-week-old bear cub who was recently rescued by a team of volunteers from the Northern Lights Wildlife Society in Smithers, BC. So the rescue went down after locals heard the cub crying, leading them to call the shelter and triggering the operation. Now, those life-saving efforts make our moment.
We got a call that a baby bear was found that was cold and unresponsive near Heffley Lake. Somehow he lost his mom. We asked the people who had reported it to take it in, put it in a towel with a warm water bottle to start heating it up. One of our board of directors picked the bear up ever since. He's been fed every 4 hours around the clock and has settled in really nicely. When I'm 5 minutes late for feeding, he starts screaming. So I'm being kept to a very strict schedule. He's about 6 to 7 weeks. His teeth are just breaking through the gums. I can easily hold him in my hand. They're certainly cute that age. I really enjoy what we're doing. We all do. We have an amazing team, and it's still exciting as much as it was the first time. I don't foresee any problems going forward. We're just going to take care of him until next year, when he will be brought back into the region and released back into his life in the wild.
So they really don't know how or why this bear was abandoned. Usually they wait about 48 hours after getting a report in case a mother bear comes back, but no one came back. He was there for a really long time. So their plan is to release him in June. Until then, they gotta feed him. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.